Look at this welfare bitch living in luxury. Drug money for sure. Officer Bradley spits the words while pointing aggressively at the pristine Georgetown townhouse. His body camera captures him kicking an expensive planter off the front steps, sending soil scattering across the marble entrance. The sound of shattering ceramic echoes through the 3:17 a.m. silence. He squints at the brass house numbers, 1247. His warrant reads 1245, but rage and assumption blind him to the simple error. Time to bring this queen back to reality, he growls, hefting the battering ram. His partner Brooks tries to speak, but Bradley's already swinging. The door explodes inward, splintered wood, twisted metal, complete destruction of what was, moments ago, perfect peace. Inside, elegant furniture, art on the walls, the faint glow of government-issued laptops still running classified briefings. But Bradley sees only what his prejudice allows him to see. What he doesn't see is about to end his career forever. Have you ever watched someone's hatred destroy the wrong target completely? Dr. Amara Washington sits in her home office at 3:15 a.m., still dressed in a crisp navy blazer despite the late hour. 3 secure phones line her mahogany desk, each representing a different level of national security clearance. The largest screen displays real-time intelligence feeds from 7 countries, while classified documents marked Eyes Only POTUS rest in neat stacks beside her ergonomic keyboard. At 48, she carries herself with the quiet authority of someone who has spent 2 decades navigating the highest levels of government. Photos on her wall tell the story. Handshakes with 3 presidents, NATO briefings, a commendation ceremony where she received the Intelligence Star for preventing a domestic nuclear threat. In one frame, she stands beside the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon's Situation Room during last month's Iran crisis resolution. Her secure line buzzes. Dr. Washington, we have movement on the Tehran package, comes the voice from Langley. She adjusts her reading glasses and pulls up encrypted satellite imagery. Even at this ungodly hour, the head of national security never truly sleeps. 2 blocks away, the real target of tonight's operation lies unconscious in a drug-induced stupor. Tommy Kowalski, a mid-level methamphetamine distributor, sleeps peacefully in his cluttered apartment at 1245 Meridian Street. Empty beer bottles litter his coffee table. Bags of crystalline powder sit openly on his kitchen counter. His front door bears obvious signs of drug traffic, multiple deadbolts, a reinforced frame, windows covered with thick curtains. But Officer Bradley's reading comprehension, compromised by 15 years of built-up resentment and recent budget cuts that denied him a promotion, transforms 1245 into 1247. In the darkness, the elegant brass numbers of Dr. Washington's address seem to confirm his worst assumptions about how these people live. Probably uses that fancy security system to warn her dealer friends, Bradley mutters to Officer Brooks as they approach the wrong house. The state-of-the-art cameras and motion sensors surrounding Dr. Washington's property aren't drug dealer paranoia. They're standard federal protection protocols for someone with her clearance level. Chen, 6 months out of the academy and still believing in procedure, holds up the warrant paperwork. Officer Bradley, the address here says, "Kid, let me teach you something about police work," Bradley interrupts, his voice carrying the condescension of someone who's made the same assumptions for over a decade. These drug dealers always try to blend in with decent neighborhoods. Makes them harder to spot. He points at the pristine landscaping, the imported stone walkway, the subtle but expensive architectural details. Nobody in this demographic earns this kind of money legitimately. Trust me. Chen notices that every other house on the block shows similar upscale features. Georgetown isn't exactly known for its low-income housing, but Bradley's certainty overwhelms her rookie instincts to question. Inside 1247, Dr. Washington closes her laptop and stretches. The Iran situation is stabilizing, but she'll need to brief the president first thing in the morning. Her emergency protocols briefcase sits beside her desk, containing direct communication links to every major intelligence agency in the Western Hemisphere. A small placard on her desk reads, Dr. Amara Washington, Head of National Security. a title that carries more operational authority than most cabinet positions. She's about to head upstairs when she hears heavy footsteps on her front walkway. Through her security monitor, she sees tactical gear and official badges. Her first thought is professional. Has there been a credible threat against a neighboring diplomat? Georgetown houses several foreign ministers and federal judges. Her second thought proves catastrophically naive. Surely these officers know who lives here. The federal database that should have flagged her address was updated just 3 hours ago with her current threat assessment level. The same system that automatically alerts 12 different agencies when her home security is breached. The same system that Officer Bradley's department accesses every single day. But databases only work when people bother to check them. Bradley hefts the battering ram, his partner's concerns about addresses and proper procedure dismissed as rookie nervousness. In his mind, he's about to bust a drug dealer who's gotten too comfortable in a neighborhood where she doesn't belong. He has no idea that he's about to assault the home of the woman who determines which police departments receive federal anti-terrorism funding. The same woman who, just last week, signed off on a review of his department's civil rights compliance. What happens when unstoppable prejudice meets immovable authority? The battering ram strikes Dr. Washington's front door at exactly 3:23 a.m. with the force of institutional momentum and personal rage. Hand-carved mahogany splinters, Italian marble chips scatter across the foyer. The sound echoes through Georgetown like a gunshot. Dr. Washington appears at the top of her curved staircase in silk pajamas and a matching robe, her laptop still clutched in one hand, classified documents in the other. Her first instinct is professional concern. Has there been a terrorist threat? An attack on a neighboring embassy? "Officers, what's the emergency?" she calls down, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone trained to manage international crises. "Has something happened to one of my neighbors?" Bradley storms through the destroyed entrance, boots crunching on splintered wood and broken stone. His tactical flashlight sweeps across oil paintings, crystal chandeliers, and furniture that costs more than his annual salary. But instead of recognizing obvious wealth and sophistication, his prejudices transform everything into evidence of criminal activity. "Get down here now," he shouts, pointing aggressively up the stairs. "Hands where I can see them." Dr. Washington sets down her laptop and raises her hands, still holding the classified documents. "Officer, I think there's been some kind of mistake." "Save it for someone who cares, lady." Bradley's voice drips with contempt as he surveys the elegant living room. "Where's the drugs? Kitchen? Basement? Don't waste my time with the innocent act." Chen enters behind him, immediately noticing the stark disconnect between their target profile and their surroundings. Drug dealers don't typically display framed congressional commendations or maintain libraries filled with foreign policy journals. She pulls out the warrant paperwork again. "Officer Bradley, the warrant specifically says 1245 Meridian Street. This house is clearly marked 1247. "Numbers are probably fake," Bradley snaps without even glancing at the evidence. "Classic dealer move. Confuse the system with false addresses. I've seen it 100 times. He turns back to Dr. Washington, who has descended the stairs with the measured composure of someone accustomed to high-stakes situations. Even in pajamas, she radiates the quiet confidence of institutional authority. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification," Bradley demands. "Real identification. And I want to know how you can afford a place like this." The question hangs in the air like a racial profiling handbook example. Dr. Washington reaches slowly for her purse, retrieving a wallet that contains 7 different forms of federal ID, including her head of national security credentials. "I'm Dr. Amara Washington," she says evenly, holding out her government identification. "I work for the federal government. This is my home." Bradley barely glances at the credentials before handing them back dismissively. "Federal government, sure. Probably some welfare office clerk trying to sound important." Chen steps closer to examine the IDs properly, her rookie training still emphasizing attention to detail. The credentials are clearly legitimate. Holographic seals, biometric chips, security features she recognizes from her academy coursework. But Bradley's confident dismissal makes her question her own observations. Who really owns this house? Bradley continues his interrogation, circling Dr. Washington like a predator. Your dealer boyfriend? Sugar daddy? Because there's no way you earned this through any legitimate work. Each word lands like a calculated insult designed to strip away dignity and establish dominance. Dr. Washington's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly, but her voice remains steady. Officer, I've lived here for 8 years. I purchased this home with my own income from my position with the Department of... Department of what? Food stamps? Bradley laughs cruelly, his partner shifting uncomfortably behind him. Let me guess. You probably claim to have some college degree, too. I have a PhD in nuclear physics from MIT and a JD from Harvard Law School. The simple statement hits the room like a verbal slap. Brooks's eyes widened. Even Bradley pauses for a moment before his prejudice reasserts itself. Right, and I'm the President of the United States, he scoffs. Lady, I've heard every sob story in the book. You people always claim to be doctors and lawyers when you get caught. You people. The phrase crystallizes everything wrong with this encounter, everything systemic and poisonous about assumptions based on skin color. Dr. Washington's training in crisis de-escalation battles with her natural human response to such blatant disrespect. Chen finds her voice. Officer Bradley, maybe we should verify... Rookie, let me handle this. Bradley cuts her off while pulling out his handcuffs. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back. On what charges? Dr. Washington asks, her legal training automatically engaging. Suspicious activity, failure to cooperate with police investigation, and whatever else I find when I search this place properly. Dr. Washington remains perfectly still. Officer, I am completely cooperating. I have shown you my identification and answered your questions. I am the victim of an obvious address error. Turn around, now! The handcuffs click into place around wrists that have signed international treaties and intelligence authorizations that keep the nation safe. The same hands that shook with world leaders just last week are now bound behind her back like a common criminal. Chen watches in growing horror as proper police procedure disintegrates into something far uglier. Her training screams that everything about this encounter violates department guidelines, but Bradley's authority and confidence make her doubt her own instincts. Sir, shouldn't we at least verify the address discrepancy? She tries again. Chen, if you can't handle real police work, maybe you should consider a different career. Bradley snarls, his attention still focused on Dr. Washington. This whole neighborhood's probably dirty money. Drug dealers, gang money, welfare fraud, you name it. A neighbor's porch light flickers across the street, then another. The sound of splintering wood and shouting voices at 3:30 a.m. tends to wake people in quiet residential areas. Ambassador Richardson, a retired State Department official who lives next door, appears on his front steps in a bathrobe. He recognizes Dr. Washington immediately. They've chatted at neighborhood association meetings, and he's seen her photo in diplomatic briefings. Officers, he calls out, approaching carefully. That's Dr. Washington. She's head of national security. There must be some mistake here. Bradley turns toward the neighbor with barely contained aggression. Sir, step back and mind your own business. This is police business. But I'm telling you, she's a high-ranking government official. I've seen her at State Department briefings. She literally runs national security operations. And I'm telling you she's under arrest for drug-related activities, Bradley shoots back. Now get back in your house before I arrest you for interfering with police business. Ambassador Richardson stands his ground, his diplomatic training recognizing a crisis in the making. Officer, I'm retired from the State Department. I'm telling you with absolute certainty that you're making a serious mistake. Mistakes, address errors, mistaken identity, Bradley waves dismissively. Funny how many mistakes happen when we bust drug operations, almost like it's coordinated. Dr. Washington speaks quietly to Ambassador Richardson. It's all right, Robert. Let them follow their procedures. This will be resolved through proper channels. Even handcuffed and humiliated, she maintains her dignity with the poise of someone trained to handle international incidents. but her calm composure only seems to infuriate Bradley further. "Yeah, keep up that act," he mutters, leading her toward the patrol car. "See how far your fake dignity gets you downtown." Chen follows behind, her mind racing through everything she's witnessed. The address discrepancy, the obviously legitimate government IDs, the neighbor's confident identification, Dr. Washington's calm, professional demeanor under extreme stress. Everything about this situation screams wrongful arrest, but Bradley's unwavering certainty makes her question her own judgment. As they reach the patrol car, Brooks notices Dr. Washington's emergency protocols briefcase sitting on the front seat of her luxury sedan. Standard federal issue, with security locks and communication equipment that only high-clearance officials are authorized to carry. But pointing this out feels impossible when her training officer is so convinced they've made a righteous arrest. The patrol car pulls away from 1247 Meridian Street, leaving behind a destroyed front door, scattered debris, and a growing crowd of concerned neighbors who can't quite believe what they've just witnessed. 2 blocks away, Tommy Kowalski continues sleeping peacefully in his drug-laden apartment at 1245 Meridian Street, completely unaware that his scheduled arrest has been derailed by one officer's inability to read numbers correctly. What happens when institutional momentum meets individual prejudice? And how long can a system ignore its own evidence? The booking area of the Metropolitan Police Department's 2nd District buzzes with the routine chaos of a Saturday night bleeding into Sunday morning. Desk Sergeant Martinez processes the usual parade of drunk drivers and bar fight participants, his 15 years of experience making him automatically skeptical of anything that seems out of place. Dr. Washington sits in the back of Bradley's patrol car, still handcuffed, watching the city pass by through bulletproof glass. Her mind operates on 2 levels, the immediate humiliation of her situation and the broader implications for national security. She was supposed to brief the president on the Iran situation in 6 hours. The secure communications protocols in her briefcase are now abandoned at her home, potentially compromising ongoing international negotiations. "Bringing in a big fish tonight," Bradley announces to Martinez as they escort Dr. Washington through the station doors. "Drug dealer from Georgetown, living way above her means." Martinez looks up from his paperwork, immediately noticing the disconnect between Bradley's description and the woman in front of him. Designer pajamas, even in silk, don't typically indicate street-level drug activity. Neither does the way she carries herself, straight-backed, composed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "What's the address?" Martinez asks, starting the intake process. 1247 Meridian Street, Bradley responds confidently. Martinez pauses, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Georgetown addresses automatically trigger additional database checks. Too many diplomats and federal officials live in the area for routine processing. He types in the address and watches as multiple red flags immediately populate his screen. "Officer Bradley," Martinez says carefully, "this address is flagged in our system as a federal VIP residence." "Computer error," Bradley waves dismissively. "You know how these drug dealers operate. They probably hacked the system, false addresses, fake documentation. I've seen it all before." Martinez looks at Dr. Washington again, noting her calm demeanor despite the obvious stress of arrest. Most drug suspects either rage against the injustice or break down from withdrawal symptoms. This woman seems to be mentally calculating something far more complex than bail requirements. Chen stands beside Bradley, her internal conflict growing stronger with each procedural violation she witnesses. During her academy training, they emphasized the importance of thorough database checks, especially for Georgetown addresses. But challenging a senior officer's judgment on her 6th month feels career-threatening. "Ma'am, I'll need your full name for the booking process," Martinez says professionally. "Dr. Amara Patricia Washington," she responds clearly. "Head of National Security, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Employee Identification Number 7739, Alpha November Delta." Martinez's typing slows as he processes this information. The specificity of her response, complete with proper federal ID formatting, doesn't match the profile of someone attempting to deceive the system. He enters her name into the federal database and waits for the results. The computer screen explodes with information. "Oh, Jesus," Martinez whispers, his face going pale as classified clearance levels and congressional confirmation records fill his monitor. "Bradley, we need to talk. Now." "What's the problem?" "Sergeant?" "The problem is that this woman has security clearance higher than our chief of police. The problem is that she's listed as Senate confirmed for her current position. The problem is that arresting her triggers automatic notifications to 7 different federal agencies." Bradley's confident demeanor flickers for the first time. "That's impossible. Look at her. Does she look like any federal official you've ever seen?" The question hangs in the air with its obvious racial implications. Martinez, a Latino officer who's faced his own share of assumptions over the years, recognizes the ugly subtext immediately. "Officer Bradley? Appearance has nothing to do with federal employment," Martinez says firmly. "These database records don't lie, congressional confirmations don't lie, and automatic federal notifications definitely don't lie." Chen finally finds her courage. "Sergeant Martinez, I tried to tell Officer Bradley that the warrant address was 1245, not 1247. He insisted the numbers were probably fake." "You tried to tell him what?" "The warrant clearly states 1245 Meridian Street. This arrest happened at 1247. It's the wrong address." Martinez looks between Bradley and Brooks, then at Dr. Washington, who has remained silent during this exchange with the patience of someone who knows that institutional processes, however slowly, eventually correct themselves. "Officer Bradley, are you telling me that you executed a search warrant at the wrong address and then arrested the homeowner for drug dealing without any actual evidence of drug activity?" "She was acting suspicious. She was in her own home, in her pajamas, at 3 in the morning, Brooks interrupts, her rookie status no longer feeling like a barrier to stating obvious facts. Martinez reaches for his phone. "I need to call Captain Rodriguez, immediately." "Sergeant, there's no need to wake up the captain for a routine drug arrest," Bradley protests, but his voice lacks its earlier confidence. "Officer Bradley, this is not a routine anything. This is a potential federal incident involving someone with security clearances that I'm not even authorized to view fully." As Martinez dials, his computer continues displaying notifications. FBI Internal Affairs, Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, Congressional Intelligence Committee Oversight. Each agency automatically alerts when someone with Dr. Washington's clearance level is detained by local law enforcement. Dr. B. Washington speaks for the first time since entering the station. "Sergeant Martinez, I understand you have procedures to follow. I would appreciate it if someone could contact my deputy director to arrange for secure communications regarding my current assignments." Her calm professionalism in the face of humiliation only emphasizes the magnitude of Bradley's error. This isn't how guilty people typically behave. This is how senior federal officials handle unexpected crises. Martinez's phone call connects. "Captain Rodriguez, sir, I know it's early, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Captain Rodriguez arrives at the station 47 minutes later, still wearing his weekend clothes, but with the grim expression of someone who's been briefed on a career-ending catastrophe. His phone hasn't stopped ringing since Martinez's call. First, the deputy chief, then Internal Affairs, then a number with a Washington, D.C. area code that made his blood run cold. "Where is she?" he asks Martinez without a preamble. "Interview room 3, sir. Still handcuffed. Officer Bradley insisted on maintaining arrest protocols." Rodriguez stops walking. "She's still handcuffed? After we confirmed her identity?" "Officer Bradley believes the federal records are falsified, sir. He's convinced this is an elaborate drug dealer cover story." Rodriguez closes his eyes for a moment, calculating the magnitude of damage control required. 23 years on the force, and he's never seen anything approaching this level of institutional disaster. He pushes open the door to interview room 3, where Dr. Washington sits with the same composed dignity she's maintained since her arrest. Her handcuffs catch the fluorescent light as she looks up calmly. "Dr. Washington," Rodriguez begins, his voice heavy with the weight of impending consequences. "I am Captain Rodriguez, and I am profoundly sorry for what has happened tonight." "Captain, I understand that mistakes occur. But I do need to contact my office regarding several time-sensitive national security matters. Rodriguez unlocks her handcuffs personally, his hands shaking slightly. Ma'am, before we proceed, I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you will be shared with Officer Bradley, and I want you to hear it directly from me. Dr. Washington nods, rubbing her wrists where the metal had chafed. Dr. Amara Washington, Rodriguez announces formally, his voice carrying to the hallway where Bradley and Brooks wait, is the head of national security for the United States government. She reports directly to the President of the United States. Her security clearance level is higher than anyone in this building, higher than our police chief, higher than most members of Congress. Through the one-way glass, Bradley's face goes visibly pale. Brooks closes her eyes, her worst fears confirmed. Rodriguez continues, each fact landing like a hammer blow. Dr. Washington holds a PhD in nuclear physics from MIT and a Juris Doctor from Harvard Law School. She was unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate for her current position. 3 weeks ago, she successfully prevented a domestic nuclear terrorism threat that would have killed thousands of Americans. That's impossible, Bradley whispers, but his voice lacks conviction. Last month, she negotiated the diplomatic resolution that prevented military conflict with Iran. Rodriguez continues relentlessly. She chairs the interagency committee that determines federal funding for local police departments, including ours. The weight of institutional catastrophe settles over everyone in the station. Brooks stares at Bradley with growing horror, realizing she witnessed not just a wrongful arrest, but a career-ending assault on someone with the power to shut down their entire department. Dr. Washington, Rodriguez says directly to her, your arrest has triggered automatic notifications to the FBI Civil Rights Division, the Department of Justice, the Congressional Intelligence Committee, and the White House Situation Room. Dr. Washington nods calmly. I assumed as much. My security protocols are designed to alert multiple agencies when I'm detained. It's standard procedure for someone with my clearance level. Your clearance level, Rodriguez repeats, which is code word classified, meaning it's higher than the FBI director's clearance, higher than most cabinet positions. Bradley finally speaks, his voice barely audible. But she was in a house that drug dealers... Officer Bradley, Rodriguez turns to face him directly. Dr. Washington owns that house. She purchased it 8 years ago with her legitimate government salary. The house you arrested her from is listed in federal records as the residential address for the head of national security. The warrant was for 1245, Brooks adds quietly, her voice filled with professional shame. I tried to tell him multiple times. Rodriguez pulls out his phone and shows Bradley the screen. Officer Bradley, the real drug dealer you were supposed to arrest is Tommy Kowalski at 1245 Meridian Street, 2 houses down from where you actually went. He's been sleeping peacefully all night while you arrested the woman responsible for preventing terrorist attacks on American soil. The room falls silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and Bradley's increasingly rapid breathing. Sir, Dr. Washington speaks calmly, I need to ask about my briefcase and secure communications equipment. I have presidential briefings scheduled for this morning regarding ongoing international situations. Already retrieved, ma'am. The FBI has secured your residence and your equipment is being transported here with appropriate clearance protocols. Rodriguez turns back to Bradley, whose face has progressed from pale to gray. Officer Bradley, do you understand that you have arrested the person who literally writes the policies on police reform and community relations? The person who determines which police departments receive federal anti-terrorism funding? Bradley's legs give out slightly, and he leans against the wall for support. Dr. Washington, Rodriguez continues, oversees domestic security operations in all 50 states. She coordinates with the FBI, CIA, NSA, and international intelligence services. Last Tuesday, she briefed NATO leadership on emerging terrorist threats. Chen stares through the glass at Dr. Washington, who maintains her composure despite being humiliated by the very system she helps protect. The irony is devastating. The woman who dedicates her life to keeping Americans safe was treated like a criminal because of her skin color. Captain, Dr. Washington says quietly, I'll need to contact my deputy director to arrange coverage for my morning briefings. The Iran situation requires continuous monitoring. Of course, ma'am. We have secure communication lines available. Rodriguez's phone buzzes with another call from Washington, D.C. He glances at the screen and his face goes even more grave. Dr. Washington, that's the Deputy Attorney General calling me directly. The Department of Justice is already initiating a civil rights investigation into tonight's events. Bradley slides down the wall until he's sitting on the floor, his career collapsing in real time. 15 years of police work, destroyed by his inability to read and address correctly and his assumption that a black woman couldn't possibly hold legitimate authority. Ma'am, Rodriguez says to Dr. Washington, I want you to know that Officer Bradley will face the full consequences of his actions. This department will cooperate completely with any federal investigation. Dr. Washington stands, her dignity intact despite everything she's endured. Captain Rodriguez, I appreciate your professionalism. I hope this incident can serve as a learning opportunity for systemic improvement. Even now, facing the worst kind of institutional failure, she responds with grace and a focus on reform rather than revenge. But outside the interview room, the consequences are already cascading through the system like a federal earthquake, and everyone involved knows that nothing will ever be the same. The FBI arrives at exactly 6:47 a.m. in 3 black SUVs, their presence transforming the police station into the epicenter of a federal civil rights investigation. Special Agent Sarah Martinez from the Civil Rights Division strides through the lobby with the focused intensity of someone who has built her career on cases like this. Institutional failures that expose the deepest fractures in American policing. Captain Rodriguez, Agent Martinez announces, flashing her credentials. We're here to secure all evidence related to the arrest of Dr. Amara Washington. Body cameras, patrol car footage, dispatch recordings, booking procedures, everything. Rodriguez nods grimly. He's been expecting this moment since his second phone call from Washington, D.C., when a voice identifying itself as White House counsel informed him that the president had been personally briefed on the situation. Agent Martinez, we're prepared to cooperate fully. All materials are being preserved according to federal evidence protocols. Dr. Washington emerges from the interview room, now dressed in clothes retrieved from her home by FBI security personnel. Even after 4 hours of detention, she maintains the bearing of someone accustomed to crisis management. Agent Martinez approaches her with the deference appropriate for someone of her clearance level. Dr. Washington, I'm Special Agent Martinez. The Attorney General sends his personal apologies for what you've endured tonight. Agent Martinez, I appreciate the quick response. Right now, my priority is ensuring continuity of my national security responsibilities. The Iran situation requires immediate attention. Of course, ma'am. We have a secure communications vehicle outside. Your deputy director is standing by for a briefing transfer. As Dr. Washington is escorted to federal communications equipment, the investigation into Bradley's conduct begins in earnest. Agent Martinez pulls his personnel file, revealing a pattern that makes the night's events seem inevitable rather than aberrational. Captain Rodriguez, Officer Bradley has 3 excessive force complaints in his file, all involving people of color. 2 were dismissed on technicalities. 1 resulted in a written reprimand. Rodriguez examines the documents with growing dismay. Agent Martinez, I inherited this officer from the previous administration. These complaints predate my command. That's noted, Captain. But what's more concerning is the training records. Officer Bradley has missed 2 mandatory bias training sessions in the past 18 months. His supervisors marked him as present, despite documented absences. Chen stands nearby, her rookie status making her simultaneously the most vulnerable and most credible witness to the night's events. Agent Martinez recognizes her tactical value immediately. Officer Brooks, I understand you attempted to correct Officer Bradley's address error multiple times. Yes, ma'am. The warrant clearly stated 1245 Meridian Street. I pointed out the discrepancy twice, but Officer Bradley insisted the numbers were probably falsified. Did Officer Bradley conduct any database checks on Dr. Washington after arresting her? No, ma'am. Sergeant Martinez ran the checks during booking. Officer Bradley dismissed the federal VIP flags as computer errors. Agent Martinez makes detailed notes, building a case that extends far beyond simple incompetence into willful disregard for evidence and procedure. Meanwhile, media attention explodes across social platforms and cable news. Head of National Security arrested in wrong address raid dominates news cycles within hours. The story contains every element designed for viral outrage: obvious racial profiling, institutional incompetence, and the dramatic irony of arresting someone whose job involves protecting the very system that failed her. CNN runs continuous coverage with the chyron when assumptions become arrests. Fox News struggles with the narrative, eventually settling on Police Procedural Failures Embarrass Department. International outlets pick up the story, with BBC News leading with U.S. security chief arrested by mistake in racial profiling incident. The Georgetown neighborhood responds with swift support for Dr. Washington. Ambassador Richardson organizes a letter signed by 17 current and former diplomats attesting to her character and professional competence. The Georgetown Citizens Association releases a statement condemning the obvious racial profiling and demanding immediate and comprehensive reform. By 9 a.m., congressional response begins pouring in. Representative Johnson, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, releases a statement demanding immediate hearings on systemic bias in law enforcement. Senator Williams, who chairs the Intelligence Committee, calls for a full investigation into how local police can compromise national security through incompetent racial profiling. The police union, reading the political winds, issues a carefully worded statement distancing itself from Bradley's actions while defending the vast majority of professional officers who serve with distinction. Union President Mike Thompson privately tells colleagues that Bradley is radioactive and completely on his own. Inside the station, Agent Martinez continues her systematic deconstruction of the night's events. She interviews Sergeant Martinez, whose database work revealed the magnitude of Bradley's error. Sergeant, when you discovered Dr. Washington's federal clearance level, what was Officer Bradley's response? He insisted the records were falsified. He said drug dealers often hack government databases to create fake credentials. Did you explain to Officer Bradley that congressional confirmation records cannot be falsified? I tried, ma'am. He dismissed everything as an elaborate conspiracy. Agent Martinez reviews the body camera footage, watching Bradley's initial assumptions crystallize into systematic bias. The recording captures every racial microaggression, every dismissal of evidence, every moment when professional procedure gave way to personal prejudice. Captain Rodriguez, this footage shows clear violations of department policy, federal civil rights statutes, and basic human decency. How did Officer Bradley advance to a 15-year veteran status with this pattern of behavior? Rodriguez struggles with the question that will define his own career trajectory. Agent Martinez, our department has struggled with accountability systems. Previous administrations prioritized complaint resolution over pattern recognition, meaning complaints were handled individually rather than analyzed for systemic issues. Correct. Each incident was treated as isolated rather than part of a broader pattern. Dr. Washington returns from her secure communications, having successfully transferred her Iran briefing responsibilities to her deputy director. Despite the personal humiliation, she managed the handoff with characteristic professionalism. Dr. Washington, Agent Martinez approaches her again. We need to discuss the broader implications of this incident. Your security clearance requires special handling of any law enforcement contact. Agent Martinez, my concern extends beyond personal consequences. This incident exposes vulnerabilities in local law enforcement's understanding of federal security protocols. If someone with my clearance level can be arrested based on racial assumptions, what does that suggest about protection for other federal officials? The question highlights a dimension that makes this case even more serious: national security implications of bias-driven policing. Agent Martinez consults her notes. Dr. Washington, during your arrest, did Officer Bradley show any recognition of federal security protocols? Did he acknowledge the significance of your identification or security clearance? Agent Martinez, Officer Bradley dismissed my federal credentials as fraudulent. He suggested I was a welfare office clerk trying to sound important. He showed no awareness of federal security protocols or their implications. And this occurred despite multiple forms of federal identification and database confirmations? Correct. Officer Bradley's assumptions about my race and gender overrode all evidence to the contrary. By noon, the investigation expands beyond individual misconduct to institutional failure. Agent Martinez discovers that Bradley's sergeant, who should have supervised the warrant execution, never reviewed the address verification. The lieutenant who approved the operation never examined the target profile. The captain who signed off on the raid never questioned why a drug dealer lived in Georgetown's most expensive neighborhood. Captain Rodriguez, this isn't just about Officer Bradley's prejudices. This represents a complete breakdown of supervisory oversight and institutional accountability. Rodriguez realizes his department faces federal oversight, potential loss of federal funding, and mandatory reform under Department of Justice supervision. Chen, meanwhile, faces her own reckoning. Her honest testimony about Bradley's procedural violations makes her a hero to reform advocates but creates tension with officers who view her as disloyal to the blue wall of silence. Officer Brooks, Agent Martinez asks, did you consider filing a formal complaint about Officer Bradley's conduct before tonight's incident? I thought about it, ma'am. But as a rookie, challenging a 15-year veteran seemed career-threatening. That fear of retaliation for reporting misconduct, is that common in your department? Chen's answer will determine whether the investigation focuses solely on Bradley or expands to examine the cultural systems that enable and protect problematic officers. Agent Martinez, there's definitely pressure to support your fellow officers, even when their behavior is questionable. And that pressure prevented you from potentially preventing tonight's incident? Yes, ma'am. I should have insisted more forcefully about the address error. I should have documented my concerns formally. Agent Martinez recognizes the institutional dynamics that transform individual bias into systemic failure. Fear of retaliation silences good officers, while problematic officers operate with impunity. The afternoon brings news that Tommy Kowalski, the actual drug dealer, has been arrested at 1245 Meridian Street. His apartment contained sufficient methamphetamine to supply half of Washington, D.C., along with evidence of distribution networks across 3 states. The contrast couldn't be starker. While federal officials pursued a manufactured case against an innocent woman, actual criminals operated undisturbed. Dr. Washington prepares to leave the station after nearly 12 hours of detention. Her final interaction with Captain Rodriguez carries the weight of institutional reckoning. Dr. Washington, I want to personally apologize for the failure of my department. We will implement whatever reforms are necessary to prevent future incidents. Captain Rodriguez, I appreciate your commitment to reform. My hope is that this incident catalyzes meaningful change rather than just individual punishment. As she exits, Dr. Washington demonstrates the grace under pressure that defines exceptional leadership. Despite enduring the worst kind of institutional failure, she focuses on systemic improvement rather than personal vengeance. But the wheels of federal accountability are now turning with unstoppable momentum. And everyone involved understands that the consequences will reshape how American police departments operate in communities they're sworn to protect. The administrative hearing convenes exactly 72 hours after Dr. Washington's arrest, in the stark fluorescent atmosphere of the police department's largest conference room. Federal observers fill the back rows, FBI Civil Rights Division, Department of Justice attorneys, congressional staff members, and representatives from the mayor's office who understand that national attention demands swift, decisive action. Police Chief Patricia Hendricks, a 25-year veteran who built her reputation on progressive reform, faces the most difficult decision of her career. The evidence is overwhelming, the political pressure immense, and the federal implications catastrophic. But more than external pressure, she confronts a fundamental question about the kind of department she leads. Officer Bradley, Chief Hendricks begins, her voice carrying the weight of institutional reckoning. You executed a search warrant at the wrong address, arrested an innocent homeowner without probable cause, ignored multiple procedural corrections from your partner, and dismissed federal identification as fraudulent. How do you respond to these charges? Bradley sits with his union representative, a man whose usual confidence has evaporated under federal scrutiny. The body camera footage leaves no room for interpretation. Every word, every assumption, every moment of racial bias captured in high definition. Chief Hendricks, I followed my training and experience. The suspect was acting suspicious and— Officer Bradley, Chief Hendricks interrupts. Dr. Washington was in her own home at 3 a.m., in pajamas, holding her work laptop. What specific behavior constituted suspicious activity? The question hangs in the air, forcing Bradley to articulate the racial assumptions that drove his actions. His silence speaks louder than any confession. Agent Martinez steps forward with federal findings. Chief Hendricks, our investigation reveals that Officer Bradley violated the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and multiple federal civil rights statutes. The Department of Justice is prepared to file criminal charges. The announcement lands like a judicial earthquake. Criminal charges against police officers require overwhelming evidence of intentional misconduct. The fact that federal prosecutors feel confident proceeding demonstrates the extraordinary nature of Bradley's violations. Additionally, Agent Martinez continues, Officer Bradley's personnel file reveals a pattern of racial bias complaints spanning 5 years. This incident represents the culmination of unchecked discriminatory behavior, not an isolated mistake. Chief Hendricks turns to the supervisory chain of command. Sergeant Williams, who should have overseen the warrant execution, shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Sergeant Williams, you signed off on this operation without verifying the target address or reviewing Dr. Washington's background. How do you explain this supervisory failure? Chief, I trusted Officer Bradley's experience and judgment. I had no reason to doubt his address verification. Sergeant, your job is to verify, not trust. Your failure to provide adequate supervision contributed directly to this incident. The dominoes of accountability fall in succession. Sergeant Williams faces demotion and mandatory retraining. Lieutenant Morrison, who approved the operation, receives a formal reprimand and loses his supervisory authority. The message reverberates through the department. Individual prejudice enabled by institutional negligence will face consequences at every level. But the most dramatic moment comes when Chief Hendricks announces Bradley's fate. Officer Bradley, effective immediately, you are terminated from the Metropolitan Police Department. You forfeit all pension benefits, health insurance, and law enforcement certifications. Federal civil rights charges will proceed independently. The termination represents more than individual punishment. It signals institutional transformation. For too long, police departments have protected problematic officers through qualified immunity and internal investigations. Federal intervention changes that calculus permanently. Officer Brooks receives a dramatically different reception. Chief Hendricks personally commends her integrity in reporting procedural violations despite pressure to maintain solidarity with a senior partner. Officer Brooks, your commitment to proper procedures under difficult circumstances exemplifies the professionalism we expect from all officers. Effective immediately, you're promoted to detective and assigned to our new Community Relations Division. The promotion sends a clear message. Officers who speak truth to power will be rewarded, not punished. Dr. Washington attends the hearing with quiet dignity, representing both the victim of institutional failure and the catalyst for necessary reform. When Chief Hendricks invites her to address the department, her words carry the moral authority of someone who has endured the worst and chosen reconciliation over retribution. Chief Hendricks, my hope is that this incident creates lasting change rather than temporary shame. Police departments protect all Americans, regardless of race or economic status. When officers allow prejudice to override procedure, they undermine the very safety they're sworn to provide. Her statement encapsulates the transformative potential of accountability. How individual tragedy can become systemic progress when institutions choose reform over defensiveness. The Federal Oversight Agreement signed that afternoon mandates comprehensive bias training, community oversight boards, and mandatory body cameras for all officers. The Department of Justice will monitor compliance for 5 years, with federal funding contingent on measurable progress. 6 months later, data shows remarkable improvement. Excessive force complaints drop by 40%. Community trust indicators improve significantly. Most importantly, the Washington incident becomes a training case study, teaching officers nationwide about the catastrophic consequences of unchecked bias. Dr. Washington returns to her national security responsibilities, but also becomes an advocate for police reform, testifying before Congress about the intersection between civil rights and public safety. Justice served through proper channels, institutional change implemented through federal oversight, and hope emerging from accountability. 1 year later, Dr. Amara Washington stands before the Senate Judiciary Committee, delivering testimony on police reform that transforms her personal trauma into national policy. The woman who was handcuffed in her own home now shapes the conversation about bias, accountability, and the fundamental promise of equal justice under law. Senators, she begins, her voice carrying the quiet authority that has defined her throughout this ordeal. Systemic change requires more than individual consequences. It demands institutional transformation. The Georgetown Police Department serves as a model for that transformation. Under federal oversight, they've implemented comprehensive bias training, community oversight boards, and early warning systems that identify problematic patterns before they escalate into federal incidents. Excessive force complaints have dropped by 62%. Community trust surveys show the highest confidence levels in departmental history. Officer Brooks, now Detective Brooks, leads the Community Relations Division with the same integrity she demonstrated during that crucial night. Her unit has become a national training center, teaching departments across America how to build accountability into their organizational culture. The officer who refused to stay silent about procedural violations now helps other officers find their voice when witnessing misconduct. Former Officer Bradley faces a different reality. Federal civil rights charges resulted in 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. His law enforcement career ended permanently, but more significantly, his case established legal precedent for prosecuting bias-driven arrests under federal statutes. Civil rights attorneys cite United States v. Bradley in cases nationwide, expanding protections for victims of discriminatory policing. The ripple effects extend far beyond one department. The Washington model has been adopted by over 200 police departments across 43 states. Municipal leaders, recognizing the catastrophic costs of unchecked bias, proactively implement reforms rather than wait for federal intervention. Insurance companies now require bias training and community oversight as conditions for liability coverage, creating financial incentives for institutional change. Dr. Washington's security clearance was never compromised, and she successfully navigated the Iran nuclear negotiations despite the personal disruption. Her professionalism under extreme stress became legendary within intelligence circles. But she uses that reputation to advocate for broader reform rather than personal vindication. The night I was arrested, she tells audiences across the country, I experienced what millions of Americans face regularly. The assumption that my appearance determined my worth. The difference is that my position gave me platforms for change that others don't have. That creates an obligation. She's established the Washington Institute for Police Accountability, which provides training, research, and legal support for communities seeking reform. The Institute's motto reflects her approach. Transform trauma into truth, truth into change. Tommy Kowalski, the actual drug dealer whose arrest was delayed by Bradley's address error, received a 15-year federal sentence for methamphetamine distribution. His case highlights the practical consequences of biased policing. When officers chase assumptions instead of evidence, real criminals operate with impunity while innocent people suffer. The Georgetown neighborhood where it all began now displays a small plaque near Dr. Washington's repaired front door, in recognition of courage under pressure and grace under fire. Ambassador Richardson, who first tried to intervene that night, organized the tribute as a reminder that individual voices can spark institutional change. Change is possible when institutions choose accountability over defensiveness, when good officers speak up about bad behavior, and when communities demand better from those sworn to protect them. Dr. Washington turned her worst night into America's teachable moment. When you witness bias in action, when you see assumptions override evidence, when you recognize the moment that demands moral courage, what will you choose? Will you speak up like Detective Brooks, or stay silent like Bradley's supervisors? Will you demand accountability like Dr. Washington, or accept the status quo? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story changed how you think about justice, accountability, and the power of speaking truth to power, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people creating extraordinary change. Because the next time someone's assumptions threaten to destroy an innocent life, you might be the voice that makes all the difference.
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.